with all that's been going on in the world at the moment, one thing that we should always be keeping up here is the environment. And it just seems to have taken a back seat at the moment. But one lady is bringing it back into our consciousness, and that's Elizabeth Mary Cummings. She's just written a new kids book called Rain Shaker, and it's been illustrated by Cheri Hughes and published by Big Sky Publishing. So join me as we get to know Elizabeth Mary Cummings and we start talking about the environment, and let's get back into that topic of conversation again. Elizabeth, welcome to my show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, look, let's jump straight into it. You've got a new book out at the moment. It's called Rain Shaker. Now, it takes a very different approach to environmental issues. Now, I'm just going to want to add, it's actually illustrated by the amazing Cheri Hughes, which she's amazing.
It is.
Now, tell us a bit about the book and the background about it.
Okay, so the book is a picture book for children aged 4 to 8, and obviously published by wonderful Big Sky Publishing, with whom we're both huge fans. Thanks, guys. And they are very strong on contemporary ideas for children, and they've got this new range called Our World, and it happens to fit within that range. But the story probably starts way back in my childhood, with being in the garden a lot and enjoying the outdoors. So I'm a person from a very young age who's always liked the outdoors, and I grew up in the UK, and I have 2 children, and we've moved over the other side of the world, and we spend a lot of time traveling back, visiting family, and when we don't, phone calls, Skype, Zoom, all these technologies help us keep in touch. And over the years, one of the big topics of conversation, especially for us Brits, is what's the weather? And we always take great pleasure in saying the great sunny days we're having in Australia, and quite often we might be talking to my husband's family in Northern Ireland, and they're talking about the rain, or it's a warm day of 18 degrees in the middle of summer, and we're saying, well, it's a cold day of 16 degrees in the middle of winter at the same time. So we had a lot of these conversations, and it came to mind that we had these extremes. We had all this rain, and then here, particularly in recent years, we've had all these droughts. And it was like, well, we could share the weather a bit. We could swap some of our 40-degree days and give you some of those degrees, and you can have some of the rain, and we'll have some of the sun. So that kind of whimsical topic of conversation between grandparents and grandchildren ensued. And so the original idea was a sort of story, a conversation between grandparent and grandchild in different sides of the world, and thinking how mixed up this world was, that there is everything we need here, but it isn't fairly distributed. So that's where Erin's story began. And it's grown from there to what it is as a published book, with a little girl who lives in the outback of Australia and wants to make a difference, wants to grow some sunflowers, knows the nutritional value of these plants, and is curious about the world. And the frustration she has is that they do not seem to be growing quick enough, and she is aware that there is a drought. So she wishes for rain. And there the magic of the story begins.
Okay. Why do you think it's important to talk to kids about climate change, the environment, and drought things and things like that? Why is it important?
Well, it's going to be their world, isn't it? They're the future leaders, they're the future parents, they're the future people who are going to be left with the consequence of what seeds, excuse the pun, but what seeds are being sowed by us adults now. And you know, quite often it makes you stop short and think, well, what are we doing? What messages are we giving our children in terms of our behavior? And I know at school there is messaging going on, and I have stopped this, but I used to get told off by my daughter because I'd be brushing my teeth and the water would be pouring down the sink. I do not know why. I'd put the tap on, wet the toothpaste and brush my teeth, and I never switched it off. And now I think about it, it's so wasteful.
So these I'm glad you don't do it now.
No, I don't do it now. But it was my daughter that taught me and made me aware of my own behavior. So I think your question of why is it important to tell children about the environment. I
Mm.
think it is so that they can then teach us, and also that then we all as a community in society, in a global society, are caring for the very planet that provides us with our life sources. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of mutual respect thing, isn't it?
Look, to me, it sounds logical.
Mm.
It makes sense to protect your environment and then to teach other people to protect it as well, for future generations, for everyone. But what do you
Yes.
think that you know, as you said, that kids learn by looking at adults, modeling adults' behaviour.
Yeah.
But you got grown-ups that you would think are sensible grown-ups, and they actually don't care about the
No.
environment. They don't care about climate change, or the worst, they're actually out there giving disinformation about it. How do you think that affects kids with trying to get this one simple message, but then that message is just split across so many different ways? How
It
do you
is.
think
And
they take it?
I think particularly in the light that children have access to so much social media, from current affairs, from
Mm,
news, from Insta, from all these elements that they're being bombarded with, I would imagine, I do believe it's quite discombobulating for them, and it's quite overwhelming that they are getting all these mixed messages, and they are seeing the consequence of climate change, and they're hearing the political arguments and some very different perspectives, and they have to try and find what the truth is, and what's where they sit in that
mm,
truth. And I think it must be so hard for them to see that and to feel that it's something beyond perhaps their control. So the elements in Rainshaker, of empowerment, of resilience, of taking action on these issues like climate change come through without being didactic. So, you know, Erin is making a difference. Erin is making decisions and observing and doing something. And I think what I'd love Rainshaker to reinforce is for children that even if they're, you know, a person is a person, no matter how small, sort of concept, that they all have a role and they are important and they can do things. And just because they haven't been around on this planet so long doesn't mean they don't have equal right to get in there. And, you know, we've seen Greta being a very public young figure for this, and she's obviously a very contemporary one, but over the years we've had lots of, you know, young people stepping up, and we need more of them. So Erin's of that ilk, and she's out to make a difference and to do it in a positive, hopeful way, because I think, you know, with a lot of the news and the current affairs being shown, it can be quite depressing, and you know, what difference can that make? You know, what difference can switching off a tap make to the whole continent and so forth? But just these little bits and changes of attitudes and little measures people can take, all added together, can have that wonderful butterfly effect. And it's trying to instill hope and optimism amongst it, and take some of that fear out that can be inhibitive, because it can be so overwhelming with all the stuff that you could do and should do and haven't done, that it can actually make people freeze.
yeah.
And not do anything, not because they don't care, but because they care so much. And that's actually, you know, there's been a rising anxiety amongst young people, and very sadly amongst some very, very young cohorts. So, and it's been measured, and I think that sometimes this information that's coming to them is so overwhelming and disempowering that it can frighten and lead to inaction. And we don't want that. We want our young people to be able to feel they can contribute and to feel that their views and their actions matter.
So it's having, I suppose what you're saying is a semblance of some aspect of control that
Yes.
the child knows, or the teenager knows, that I can actually control something. Because I know, like, look at last year, all the climate protests that were going on.
Yes.
And, you know, and I applaud those guys, you know, jumping out of school with the support of teachers and stuff, to actually stand up for something that they believe in. And then they're all cut down by politicians, by the sectors of government and all that. So you're getting this all these mixed messaging. You know, they're going, this is what I'm passionate about, but their authority figures are going, well, no, you shouldn't be passionate about that. But So that can lead to that powerlessness because they're going, well, what can I do? What can I do? But I suppose what you're saying is you can bring it back to the grassroots, turning off a tap, planting a flower, planting a veggie garden, starting a worm farm, doing those sort of things can actually empower kids in that regard, can't it?
Indeed it can. And, you know, the Take Three, I know a lot of the minnows, which are, you know, the nippers organizations in the surf clubs are doing a lot of this Take Three. So kids are coming to the beach and taking 3 pieces of rubbish away when they go. And just raising awareness. They're using sipper bottles. They're being discouraged to use certain packaging at school. And again, of course, the control comes back to the children, although it's the parents that are often making the lunches for these very young children. But by getting the children to learn, they can then teach their family, their carers about you know, new ways of thinking about old problems. And I think that's wonderful. And I think what's sad about that whole point you made about politicians is that I do think the majority of people who go into political careers come from a place of wanting to make a difference and wanting to do something right. And obviously everyone's got different political shading to how they feel that should be achieved. But I do think the starting point for politicians comes from a desire to make a difference. And I think once you step into that arena, it is a very complex one, and there's the stuff going on behind the scenes that we the public aren't always privy to, and the juggling of and the compromising that has to go on.
So all the backroom deals, and I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back if I want to get this done. And there's nothing. I think what you're saying is that genuine intent in the beginning of actually doing good and actually serving your constituents, it gets so muddled and so confused and so pulled apart, and you're left there going, well, what have you actually achieved? What are we actually doing? Do you think parents are overwhelmed by let's just put it this way, at the moment with COVID-19 pandemic, lockdowns, Victoria and all that sort of stuff, it's almost like the environment, climate change, everything's just it's big distraction now. It's not focused on it. And you've got parents who have kids who are still obviously with that intention of wanting to actually help the planet, protect the planet. Do you think they're actually feeling so overwhelmed at the moment that we just can't do everything at once, that the environment has to take a back seat for the moment? Do you think that, or do you think there's room for both?
There's an element of that, isn't there? I mean, we all had our little keep cups, and then suddenly when COVID came along, we were all back to the disposable cups, and no one was allowed to take their keep cup along to the shop anymore. So there's been aspects of that, and all the gloves, and then you know, again, my daughter, who's a lot older now, she's a student now, but she sent me a thing the other day. It was a little information sort of meme thing from Facebook, and it was something about cutting the strings. So it's reminding us that we probably, you know, we're doing the right thing, disposing carefully of these masks, but we're forgetting to cut the strings. And that actually causes a lot of danger in the ocean where they can end up. And by simply cutting the string that hooks over your ears, you're actually reducing the dangers of that mask as it breaks down, and things like that you don't know. But again, that was me being taught by the younger generation, and
they have got so much to teach us adults, don't they? They really do.
They do. I used to run a chess club at a school. I'm a primary school teacher by training. I've got a psychology background, but moved into primary teaching, and I used to run a chess club at one school, and someone said to me, oh, you know, I heard Charles, you know, beat you at chess today. And this was, you know, the kid at chess who really was passionate about chess, and they thought this was funny. And I said, you know what, it was the best day. I said, when he beat me, and he genuinely, they were going, did you let him win? And I said, no, of course I didn't. You know, don't you know how competitive I am? I said, no. And I said, for me as a teacher, I said, that for me is success, when my students are moving on beyond where I can, you know, and beating me at chess, or going on to do, you know, A-level physics or higher grade physics. Or,
that's the whole point of teacher educating, so they actually take on all those skills. Now, you mentioned that you're a degree in psychology. You've also got a business master's in education, business degree. You're a school teacher. What kind of perspective does all that? I mean, I'm tired thinking about all that. But what perspective does that give you in writing kids' books?
It's interesting. I've always been, I mean, the bottom line is I've always been someone who loves words. I love reading. I'm a bookworm. I was the sort of kid that would always be told off for having my nose in a book, reading under the covers, taking a book in the bath and making it, you know, how they balloon up when you take a book in the bath. I just can't get enough. And, you know, but my bedside table full of books. I'm passionate that my love of writing comes from my love of reading, of storytelling. And I guess, I've always been someone who's been really interested in relationships and how people connect with each other. And that's where I went into psychology. And then the teaching ties in with that because, you know, loving the connection with young people. And when I was teaching, you know, teaching literacy and the reading corner and all that side of things was something that I felt very passionately about as, and I guess they all interweave. So as a writer, I draw upon stories. I play with the concept of myself as a child. I don't particularly feel I've grown up, I've got older, but I still love that wonder of things that have, you know, looking at the ocean or being outside, playing around with it, you know, scribbling sketches, you know, not necessarily.
And seeing one of those giant sunflowers for the first time of the
Yes,
season, you know,
exactly.
those big ones, you go, whoa. Yeah.
Yes. And yes, it just makes you go, wow. So it's sort of channeling your inner child, and then also in that looking at the world from that perspective. So my books, whether they be picture books about mental health issues, they'll be taking a child's perspective on what's going on in the family dealing with a mental health issue, or it may be looking at the community and people's jobs within that community. So children are always fascinated with people's jobs and truck drivers and garbage guys and people who hold road signs and all those things that children see that we take for granted as adults because we're just getting on with the life. And I think it's capturing that and then sharing that as much to explore that for a community as to direct that narrative towards children. So a lot of the books being picture books are shared with carers and children or in families or schools, and I hope that the adults get as much out of them as the children by rethinking their perspective or their stereotype of, you know, for instance, a book I wrote on the hairdresser. They're not just someone who cuts hair, they're someone who talks to lonely old people, who helps someone come to terms with shaving their head when they're going for chemo, that helps someone prepare for a wedding, or helps someone change their image when they're needing a lift, or visit someone sick at home to cut their hair. So, or help someone take nits out their hair. So all these aspects of being a hairdresser are often, you know, taken for granted. And so, I just love playing with that idea, I guess, and that's what comes through the books. And again, with Erin, she has that magic that she believes she can make the rain come, and isn't that incredible?
And you know, if only we all had that level of belief.
I know, and it's the fact that she dances and the rain comes, and she just feels so exuberant and enlivened with this joy, and that's what I guess I hope to capture.
So I was going to say, with because mental health is another big thing. You mentioned that as well just before, and being a psychologist, what is the state of mental health with kids at the moment? What are you reading?
Well, I'm actually working with an organisation in Melbourne at the moment, and they're in quite heavy lockdown, and it's impacted this particular organisation tremendously because they relied on transportation and exportation and that whole moving of people. So to have that taken away has really impacted them as an organisation and all their staff. And so they've devised a platform to engage families and do a lot of sort of support with homeschooling. So they've got me on board with contributing in that way. And what they're saying, for instance, is that families are feeling overwhelmed, as you mentioned. People aren't knowing where to go. They're struggling with their own mental health, and they're often in quite confined areas. I mean, not everyone lives in a house with a garden. Not everyone has, you know, more has privacy, you know, they may be sharing bathrooms in a
Yep,
larger
and
family, that sort of
could be
thing.
in a flat in a high rise or something like that.
That's right. And, you know, I was hearing a story of someone being told off because they'd gone out with curfew to walk their dog that needed to go, you know, do its business. And they were saying, well, I can't let the dog go in. You know, it's a Great Dane. And they were saying, you've been warned, next time you're going to be fined. And
Wow.
And the man said, well, I work all day and my work will not allow me to be at home. I've come home to this animal that's been caged up or, you know, penned in. And they were only walking around the compound. So children are part of that whole thing of seeing this happen. And from what I'm hearing, it's tough for them. And then the slightly older children that you were hearing on the news about all this, will there be formals, will there not? I think almost they're the worst hit. They're on the brink of freedom, on the brink of adventure, about to embark on this next stage of their lives. And the way that they've probably they've grown up to expect that this might happen in a certain way has been snatched from them because of this pandemic, which is
I was reading something that the Victoria Parents Council shared, which was about the rite of passages for teenagers.
Yeah.
Though, as you said, the school formal, the leaving and all that sort of stuff, they're all gone. So that transition from school to adulthood it's non-existent. It's blurred. It's ugly. No one knows what it's going to look like, and these kids are just going to have to make it up as they go. And that's the tough thing, isn't it?
I think it's so hard. And then you've got the ones. Both my daughters are students, and they've been doing online learning. They've not known from week to week when they might go back, and then they have gone back, and just how that will be and how their assessments will be carried out. It's very difficult, and the uncertainty that they're then having to carry as they go about their daily life, you know, leads to.
Are there going to be jobs? What jobs are there going to be when they leave school? What's going to happen? Their idea of what their career was going to be, is that still going to exist? So all these questions, and these kids have to really work that out, or not even work it out. It's just almost like you have to just write it out, because you can't make any hard decisions now, can you? Except just sit back and go, I got to go with this, because if I resist it, it's going to cause more anxiety, more pain, more suffering.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I don't know about you, but when I was a student, I went to Edinburgh University. So I grew up near Glasgow and I went to Edinburgh University. So I was living away from home during the term. And it was a great time to explore oneself, to test boundaries, to be reckless, to make new friendships, to just enjoy growing up, really, and have
that new sense of freedom, of, as you said, exploring all life's possibilities.
And what's on offer, what, you know, society might join, what you know, you might do with your free time, explore different music, all that sort of adventure has gone or is put on hold.
I think it'll just transform into something else. It has to. Yes. You know, I don't think it's going to end up being this big gaping hole, and these kids will just need therapy for the rest of their lives for it. I think we've got to give credit to a lot of the teenagers and young adults now. Their resilience is going to be pretty amazing, I'm pretty sure, and they're going to teach us oldies a little bit more about how to actually be a bit more flexible with our thinking, a bit more flexible with our emotions, and that's what holds me with a bit of hope for the future. Yeah. And I hope I'm right about that.
Yeah, I certainly think it's going to change. I mean, and the other thing is it's forcing people into quite confined, intense relationships in small groups. So if you do socialize, you do it with your family, or you do it in small, you know, designated group sizes. And that is going to be interesting in terms of how people choose to socialize once things widen up. Will that intimate experience that has been reconnected? And we hear about families playing jigsaws together, or you know, doing that sort of family activity that might not have been a first choice for a Saturday night. They're always coming back. Maybe there'll be new ways of being that we haven't thought about. And I think some of the good things about if you want to look at the positives, is that it is a time for reevaluation. And hey, look at the way that we've seen these drone images of how pollution has gone very quickly
I
once
know.
air flight has stopped and so forth. That's
And that's
interesting.
pretty incredible, you know.
Mm.
So given all that, what's the most important thing in life to remember or to focus on?
Oh, I think it's the most important thing is to remember you're here now. There is the past that can't really be changed. That there's the future that has all its uncertainties. But we are here. Each one of us is here now in the moment. And I think that whole idea of, you know, you live each day like your last is very melodramatic. But the sense of the presence, the sense of the now, and the sense of feeling that mindfulness to that, I think, is important. And I think if you think, I'm here now, this is what I can do now. So if you're Erin, I can grow sunflowers. If you're you and I can write an inspiring narrative that I want to share. If you're a teacher, it's I have been given this opportunity to make a positive impact in a young person's life, and taking that and being mindful. I mean, in teaching, I saw many occasions that people have gone into teaching with the right purpose of wanting to help children learn and get drowned in the admin and the paperwork and the stresses of life, and could be quite underwhelming as a teacher, but they'd kind of lost their purpose. And I think coming back to what positive difference one can make now and how one is now is should be something that's central to each choice that one makes, because once you've made that choice or lived that day, that's that day gone. You know.
Yeah,
So
no, exactly.
I try and keep that in mind, you know.
I heard once, and it's one of these, like a Zen koan, where they say you actually only have now, because you can only think about the past in the present moment, and you can only think about the future in the present moment.
Yeah.
And like you think about that and you go, and my brain just collapses at that thought, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Now,
And
Rain Shaker, when is Rain Shaker coming out?
Rain Shaker's coming out at the beginning of October, and Big Sky Publishing are taking pre-orders now, and we are very excited about the attention it's been gaining, and that everywhere I'm looking there are sunflowers. I've already got myself a sunflower t-shirt for the launch, because I think sunflowers are very popular now, and maybe it's because of COVID, and sunflowers are so representative of joy and hope and brightness that they've become a very popular plant this year. And as an image, I'm seeing it everywhere. So I'm hoping the plants, the stars, everything's aligning for a beautiful launch month, and we're very much looking forward
You've tapped into the zeitgeist of sunflowers, so well done.
Inadvertently. And as you say, Cheri Hughes has just done an extraordinary job of visualizing the narrative that I have created. And I think the two of us work really well as a team, and I'm just blown away. I don't know about you, but when I've seen the way she's illustrated my work, I've actually, the first time I see the, you know, the roughs when you get sent them by the editor, I've actually been in tears, because some of the imagery has just captured that essence that I was communicating through my writing, and to see it visually it just blows you away.
It must be pretty nerve-wracking to go, you get the email through and it says draft illustrations, and you go, click, and and that's when it's a combination of joy and relief that the illustrator has got it, and then they've taken it to another degree and made it better than what you could ever imagine.
That's right. And how they see things, how they see words. And there's a whole lot of science in visual literacy. And there's a friend of mine who's in the Children's Book Council of Australia, and she's done an amazing piece of research with the State Library in visual literacy, and was talking at a recent meeting. So if you get a chance to check out, it must be on the State Library website, visual literacy. It's fascinating what we can communicate without words, and just understanding how that comes together in a book is such a great way to access, particularly if you're trying to share a book with children who may not have a grasp for the written form. It's so useful to be able to have these other tools to share stories with. So as a teacher, I think visual literacy plays a massive part in helping children develop their literacy as a
It
whole.
is integral. Now, Elizabeth, how do people get in contact with you?
So I have a website. I'm elizabethmarycummings.com, and there's contact on that. And
It's
of course,
important that people get that web address right. I'll make sure I put it down the bottom here.
Thank you. Yes, elizabethmarycummings.com. And of course, with Big Sky Publishing, I'm on their author page. And as a member of the Society of Authors and Children's Book Council and Squibbie, I'm also on their sites listed as author and speaker, and very happy. I love doing school visits and workshops.
They're good fun. They are huge fun, aren't they?
They're really great. And I've done some, workshops with the staff too on professional development stuff. And that's always fascinating. You spend the whole day with the children, and then you do a workshop with the staff, and you see the whole thing through.
Yes.
And part of you see how the community works. And I love that.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me on the show, and look, every success for Rainshaker.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to share it with you, and keep on writing yourself. I always love your books. Have you got a new one coming out too soon?
Yeah, I do have one coming out next year, and it features a giant sunflower.
Does it? You're kidding? Oh, wonderful. Well, hopefully I'll get to interview you.
That'll be great. That'll be great. Elizabeth, we'll talk again soon.
Keep shining. Bye.
Hi, thank you very much for watching the latest episode of Josh Langley Gets to Know. Got any questions, whether you want to say whether you liked it, you didn't like the interview, and like my hair's too grey or something like that, post a comment below. I won't get upset, okay? Now, gratuitous plug here. If you want to grab my books, Being You Is Enough, Okay to Feel the Way You Do, or Magnificent Mistakes, or all three, just go to my website at joshlangley.com.au, because it's about trying to change the world one book at a time, helping one kid just to feel good about who they are and feel good in their own skin. If we can just help one child, then they may help another child, then another one, then another one, and then that's how we slowly change the world. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next episode.